And so I encourage you, there's this guy is Dr. Andrew Huberman, and he's an interesting guy. He is a professor of neuroscience and ophthalmology at Stanford University. Now, in the United States, Stanford University is one of the very top, highest level universities. It's one of the best in the end. So he's a professor at their medical school. So he's a professor of neurology and ophthalmology. And when you can link those two together because the eye and the brain are connected almost directly. There's a direct connection between the eye and the brain. And so he's studying the brain, but he's also studying the eye. But what he does is, he's also runs a research lab. So he's in the lab doing all the latest research. And the fun thing about this is, oftentimes what's going on in the research labs is probably 10 years ahead of what we ever hear. Because most of the time in the researchers, they'll write their papers and maybe it gets published. And if it is, it's in some arcane magazine that nobody reads, you know. And then eventually your doctor's going to read it. And then eventually it's going to come down and maybe the news media will get a hold of something of it. And then, you know, but it's already old news to these guys. Well, this guy's in the lab every day, and he's got a podcast that comes out every Monday. And so every Monday there's something new that he's saying, hey, here's what we're learning in the lab today. So it's like real time. And then the cool thing is, all of his friends, or a lot of his friends, are also researchers. So there's a guy named Dr. David Sinclair at Harvard. And Harvard is also in America another kind of pretty good school. It's one of the best we've got. So he's a researcher at Harvard, and he's a geneticist. And his whole thing is on longevity of life. And then, you know, so he brings in all these people who are doing the research. And so what you're getting is like real-time research, and it's all about well-being. His whole podcast, it just covers a whole variety of topics about well-being. That's what's at the moment. And so when you listen to Huberman, and he talks about like one of the most important things, and probably not, some of this is age related, but for example, sleep. Sleep is probably the most important thing you can do, because I think I mentioned the other day. It's when you when you go to sleep, your body, your brain goes into approximately a 3-hour cycle of cleansing. So you used to think, oh, you need 8 hours of sleep, and you think your brain is working, 8 hours. Well, your brain isn't it's working on approximately 3-hour cycles. And every 3 hours it cleanses the brain. It takes out all of the debris and all this stuff and makes sure all the little cells are in order or whatever. What goes on. But anyway, by getting a good sleep, your brain resets itself. Now how important is that? You might miss a good night's of sleep or a bad, but if you do that consistently, then your brain function isn't going to be nearly as positive, as sharp as it could and should be. And then when people say, well, how do you get a good night's sleep? Well, he's got the world's expert in sleep. And come to find out that sleep has to do with exposure to sunlight. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, and especially early in the morning, because every cell in your body has what's called a circadian clock. It's like a little clock that is keyed to where the sun is. Okay, so it's keeping track. Every cell in your body has that. So if you get up early in the morning, you go out and catch the sunlight. The early morning sunlight is probably the most powerful in terms of setting because all of these clocks, if they're set in coordination, then they all function together. But if they don't know what part of the day you're in, then they get off. And so early morning, get out, let the sunlight come in, and that sunlight then hits your your retina, and your retina determines the intensity of the sunlight and knows how to figure out what time of day it is. And then it sets all the clocks in your body, every cell, it sets them. And you say, well, what is that? Well, energy levels, you know. It gives your body cohesiveness. It's now you're on the same time zone. And he talks about, changing time zones and jet lag. He said that's really hard. And the people like pilots and things like that are continually going back and forth, they probably suffer the most. But anyway, all this to say that you really need to at least listen to, it's just called Huberman Lab. You can Google it and it comes right up. He's probably got close to 300 podcasts, and it covers, every possible question you would have regarding well-being, he's probably already discussed it on his podcast. And so, really a great resource. I encourage you to take a look at it. And so, physically, be as healthy as you can be. One of the ways to do it, and I know this is a bad word for some people, exercise.
Oh, yeah.
And so, a lot of people say, well, I don't like to exercise. I don't want to exercise. That's not the point. The point is well-being. Your body was made to move. Okay? And I'm not sure exactly what the correlation is. But remember in Genesis in the fall, one of the things that God said as a consequence of that is you will work for men. You will work. And at least at that point it meant some kind of physical activity. Because back in that day, I don't think you would sit in your office with your feet up, on your cell phone, watching the internet. Your only option was to work and work hard. Now, obviously, there's some of us that tend to be a little extreme on this, I'll admit. But you don't have to run 20 miles a day. But you do have to set some kind of a daily goal of movement, of doing something. And again, the body, as well as we talked about, one of the ways of growth is resistance. That's why when you hit trouble and you hit resistance, when you push against it, you get stronger. That's what lifting weights is all about. You pull up on something that's resisting and you walk away and you're stronger for it. So opposition is the key to getting stronger. And there used to be an exercise, they call it isometric exercises, where you'd stand up next to a wall and you'd push as hard as you can against the wall. Well, you walked away, the wall didn't move, right? You came away stronger. So you've got to decide for yourself. And trust me, please start now, okay? Start now, because I just know so many people who, when they hit 60 or 65, they're done. They're overweight, they've done nothing physically, and they just basically have a hard time getting around. They don't feel good, they don't do much, and they're done. And yet, there's no retirement from discipleship, guys. It's not like, well, I'm a retired disciple. No, this is a life calling. And so you've got to be persistent. You've got to be committed to do this as a lifestyle, as for the rest of your life. Now, it doesn't, again, it can be any kind of exercise. It can be from Pilates to yoga to whatever. But I encourage you, do something that has to do with cardio. Okay, cardio health, which means getting your heart rate up for 15, 20 minutes a day above a certain level. Okay? And that, again, that stimulates the blood flow that stimulates the blood flow to the brain. Your whole body reacts to exercise in a good way. And so you don't have to, but I'm encouraging it. Because like I say, I've got a lot of friends my age that are basically housebound right now. They just can't do hardly anything, but they've never done anything. Now, in all honesty, there are exceptions, okay? Lauren Cunningham, for example, who is the founder of Youth with a Mission. I'm pretty sure Lauren never exercised a day in his life. It just wasn't him. That just wasn't part. He was so focused on extending the kingdom of God and getting young people involved in missions. And David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen Lauren out for a run.
I used to walk around the block there in Kona a few times.
Did he? Okay. So he-
Joe Vitale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but, you know, getting out for a walk is great, right? But if you could get, again, if you can get your cardio up, then if you can get your heart rate up to, well, the best rate is up to 130 beats a minute, and sustain that for 20 minutes or so, then that's maximum, okay? And you're not gonna start there, so you might say, yeah, I'll get my heart rate up, whatever, 110 or 100 or whatever, and then build up to it. But keep moving, do something. Find an exercise you like to do, or are willing to do, let me put it that way. And this is not fun, you guys. It's painful a lot of the time. It hurts. But the motivation and back of it is, it hurts, but it also makes you a better person physically. So, for what it's worth. Never stop moving, push yourself, and oh, by the way, afterwards is when you feel good. You don't feel good before you go, but when you come back now, you're a runner.
Yeah.
Yeah. While you're running, it's not pleasant, but when you're done, you're usually glad you did it, right?
When we run, it should be also good for expressing feelings out of ourselves. This is not a joke, this is real. And we can feel really so much better after, even before we start. It's like another day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a really bad mood before and really good mood after
Yeah.
for the rest of the day.
Yeah, well, this is it, right here. Same serotonin and dopamine, that's what you get when you exercise. Remember, accomplishing goals, the serotonin is making you feel good about it. The dopamine is a motivator. It motivates you to come back and do it again. It only works if you do it, okay? If you don't do it, then you don't get the positive rewards afterwards. But when you do it, I mean, I don't know how many times I just dread going out for my runs, whether it's in the winter or whatever. But when I come home, I don't think I've ever regretted going, okay? So, for what it's worth, note to self, I encourage you to do the best you can. Stay as physically fit as you possibly can. It will pay you back. When you're 50 and 60, you're going to be really glad. 50 and 60, you can start then, but it's an uphill climb, let's put it that way.